most ministries have always been in a sense of inertia. There are very good people within these ministries, I can tell you, very well qualified people. But what they lacked in the past, in my opinion, was leadership. To lead by example, to show how it should be done, and to pull them along. One of the first things I did, in fact, the very first thing I did when I walked into this office in May of last year, was I called all of the senior staff and I said to everyone, whatever has happened in the past has happened in the past. Whoever you've supported in the past as a political party, that is your business. Everybody starts with a clean slate, as far as I'm concerned, a clean sheet of paper. You will be judged not on what you did or you didn't do previously, but what you do from today. And you will notice that, yes, I'm very hands-on and I'm out on the fields on a regular basis. And when I say regular, I mean more often than I'm in my office. You will notice that most of my top-level staff, from the PS down, they're always with me. And there's a reason for that. Because once they sense and they understand what the little people go through on a daily basis, it makes it a lot easier to translate that into policy. When you are removed from what people go through, what they've lived, how they've sacrificed, how they've suffered, it's not easy to to mix practice and policy together. But when you see for the first hand what people have gone through, it makes it a lot easier to understand what is required when you're writing a policy. We embarked on a process of developing a 12-month plan of action emanating out of those discussions. It wasn't, as it has been in the past, a prescription written from St. Clair here and then handed down to the farmers. It was a 12-month and 3-year plan that was developed in conjunction with the farmers. And from that, we developed, as I said, a number of priority areas that we were going to concentrate on, but all with a mandate that we develop ourselves of reducing the inflation rate, which, as you know, is running at, or was running at the time at 15%, now down to 10%, primarily driven by food prices, both imported and local. Second mandate, to ensure that we reduced our outflows of foreign exchange. We are currently spending, and have been for the last 3 or 4 years, close to $4 billion of foreign exchange on food. Third mandate was to put our people back to meaningful, long-term, productive employment. As you know, we have a number of make-work programs that we've inherited, and we've got a number of people are out of productive, skillful, long-term employment, and agriculture will present that opportunity. The fourth one was to provide food security for our country. Many countries today across the world are no longer exporting because of several reasons. One, varying climate conditions, where a lot of countries, as an example, Russia has recently been subject of significant droughts, whereas normally they wouldn't have drought periods like that. Australia is now having significant flooding where they would normally have a drought period. So weather patterns have changed significantly in such a way that countries like India and Pakistan, Russia, Australia are no longer exporting to countries like ourselves the kind of goods that we would normally import. And so therefore, this issue of food security and food sovereignty is so important to our country. And the fifth one was, as we've talked about for many years, diversifying away from oil and gas. The perennial problems that we've suffered every single time we have a situation where on the world markets, oil and gas either dip in terms of price, or there is a fall off in supply. As a direct result, the economy suffers. So those are the mandates we set for ourselves, and we went about it by meeting with farmers, meeting with all of the stakeholders in the community to decide how together, not just the ministry, but how together we could actually push this forward. From January through to May, we are going to put down 300 retention ponds across Trinidad and Tobago. It's by no means all that we require, but it's as much as we can do this year. And to put it in context, the previous regime were putting down on average 20 ponds a year. We're putting down 300 this year alone. Similarly, we're cleaning drains. With the help of the Ministry of Local Government and Ministry of Works, we're desilting river mouths so that water can run off more smoothly and therefore not settle on the lands and flood out the crops. But of course, by building these retention ponds, it will also take water, rainfall water, away from the crops and into the ponds. So that will take care of irrigation. But in addition to that, we're also putting up 12 very large pumps on the banks of the Caroni. We've already installed 2. These pumps pump on average 10,000 gallons of water per minute out of the river and into the fields. So by the time the dry season comes around again next year, we will not have an issue as far as irrigation is concerned. The third major area was the area of access roads. It's a perennial problem. Farmers can't get in to plant their crops, and when they've planted it, if and when they plant, they can't get their crops back out to market because they've not had access roads. We're putting in over 200 kilometers of access roads this year alone. By the end of May, those roads will be in. And let me also reiterate here again, all of these programs were developed in conjunction with the farmers' associations. We didn't sit here in St. Clair and say, you know what, I think we need 2 kilometers of road in Tabakit, 2 kilometers in Beach, 2 kilometers in Laventil. We got the farmers' associations together and we said, tell us where the major food baskets are and where the areas that would benefit most from us putting in access roads. So we're not just spending money, we're spending money in a very focused and productive way that will yield actual results. Again, in conjunction with the farmers. The fourth area, and there are 5 of them, the fourth area was the scourge of Praedial larceny. Praedial larceny is something that has been a problem for the farmers of Trinidad and Tobago for many, many years. We've now put in place a new regime a new squad dealing with Praedial larceny, but also we've now introduced technology to deal with Praedial larceny. We've also now linked the Praedial larceny squad to the police stations, so they're actually directly going to be sitting in police stations. We're giving incentives for the use of for the use of cameras, the use of security lights, for the use of fencing around your farms. So we're now in the process of implementing a new Praedial larceny program. And the fifth issue was the old incentive program was probably 15 or 16 years old and was completely and totally outmoded, outdated, irrelevant to today's farmer and today's costs. We've now revamped it. We've included new areas that were never included before, like incentives for aquaculture, incentives for the value chain in terms of refrigeration, agro-processing, a lot of new areas. I mentioned Praedial larceny that were never put into an incentive or was never seen as being necessary in an incentive program before. So those are the 5 main areas that came out of our discussions and consultations with the farmers and the fisher folk that we are now implementing. And just want to mention one more thing, and that is that as it relates to the fisher folk in Trinidad and Tobago. We have visited probably about 20 fish landing sites in Trinidad and Tobago over the last 10 months. There are 64 fish landing sites in Trinidad and Tobago that has some sort of infrastructure. And in all cases, they have been severely neglected. It's actually scandalous if you go to any of them and you look at the fact that food is actually been brought in and processed there in most cases. They have no running water, no toilet facilities, no electricity, no telephones, none of the basic facilities, no locker rooms to put their engines or to store their nets and so on. We have, this year, having visited many of them, we have agreed that this year we will refurbish 16 of them. We started with Mondiablo, which we launched about 2 weeks ago, and if you were there, you would have seen the amount of work that we've done. We've put in a new slipway, we've put in, as I said, toilet facilities, bathroom facilities, running water, electricity, telephones, and we intend to do the same at 16 such sites this year, so that we now upgrade our fish landing site facilities and we provide our fisher folk with a decent quality of life. Agriculture generally has been looked upon as something that's the lowest rung on the ladder to get involved in. In fact, many farmers will tell you across the country, and many that we visited, they would not encourage their children to get involved in farming because it's hard work, and in the past, agriculture has been totally neglected. What we're trying to do is to change the mindset so that agriculture is now looked upon not just as subsistence farming, but as a business. We're trying to refocus our youth to understand that agriculture creates tremendous opportunities for them to become entrepreneurial and to become involved in agriculture as a business. Now, how are we going to do that? We can only do that by creating incentives for young people to get involved in agriculture. As a direct result, we've been out and we've spoken. I met with 125 students at the University of the West Indies recently. All of them graduates in agriculture who in the past traditionally have come out of university and they've got nothing to do. So they either go into teaching or they go into another profession, and they're lost. That 3 years of commitment that they've spent at the university is lost to the agricultural sector. What we're doing now with regard to them and other students at UTT and COSTAT, we're building in a component whereby the course will now incorporate an industrial component, so that if the course is generally 3 years, it will now be extended to 4 years. But in the middle, there will be a 1-year component where we will find, as a ministry, we will find work in the agricultural sector with a large farm, with a Nestle or a Taba or the ministry, a year's work for a student to go in and understand what farming and agriculture is all about. So from there, they get a good feel for whether they want to do ministry work, whether they want to go into agro-processing, whether they want to become an entrepreneur themselves and go out and start their own farms and so on. That's the first thing. The second thing is that for many years, agricultural students, they will do a final year thesis, as you would know. And generally speaking, what happens is that thesis is marked and they fail or they pass and it's put on a shelf. It's never taken to the next step. Now, many of our young people have very bright, creative, innovative ideas, but it sits on a shelf because there's no one to take that and translate it into real life. And sometimes all it needs is a little bit of tweaking. You know what happens now? A lot of foreign universities and a lot of foreign business people come to Trinidad. These pieces of work that these students do are not patented or trademarked in any way. They copy it, they take it back to their countries, they tweak it, and they put it into action. And it's lost to Trinidad and Tobago. What we're now going to do is to encourage these young students through loans given by the ADB, which we've set aside for them, to now develop these to the next stage. Okay, and so we're going to make sure that, not all of course, but maybe the top 5 will be given the opportunity to take it to the next stage. And that also adds an incentive to young students coming in year 1 and 2 to know that at the end of year 3 or 4, there is this incentive to take this to the next level. We do not in the ministry have a land use plan for Trinidad and Tobago. We have not been able to identify the parcels of land in Trinidad, who the owners are, what the land is being used for, and so on. It's been done, unfortunately, as we say in Trinidad and Tobago, in a very Vike way over the years. It is one of the reasons why we find ourselves in the current position where we have large amounts of land being occupied by, I want to use the word loosely, squatters. Many of them are not actually squatters. They may have legitimate rights to those lands. Let me give you an example. I have a lease for 30 years. My lease has expired. I've been farming the land for 30 years. I have now applied to the state to renew that lease, which I have an option to do. The state doesn't reply to me for 10 years. What do? I'm still on the land. I'm still planting. I'm still a productive farmer. Am I really a squatter? That's one example. Your forefathers may have owned the land. They have passed on and they have gifted the land to you. Through no fault of your own, your papers have not been processed by the ministry. You're planting, but you're legitimately there, but you're not legally there because you don't have the papers. So if the police came tomorrow morning, you don't have the papers. If somebody came on those lands and said, these are my lands, you can't even prove it because you don't have the papers. Are you a squatter or not? So you have a number of people in Trinidad and Tobago who are legitimately on lands, but because of the bureaucracy over the years involved in the ministry, they have not been legitimized. So therefore, there is a major, there is a significant need now to ensure that we can determine which parts of Trinidad and Tobago are going to be allocated for agriculture, which parts are going to be allocated to housing. And we made a very broad statement when we came into government. And that was that we would return all agricultural lands to agriculture. We are in the process, and we have been doing it since we came in June, and since we came into office in June, of determining the class of soils across the country. In fact, 11 of the sites that were earmarked for, of the 11 sites that were earmarked for housing by the EMBD under the previous regime, we've returned 4 to housing because the soils were not, for 2 reasons. One, the soils were not applicable for planting, and secondly, the construction work was too far gone to stop it. But there's 7 others now we've returned to agriculture. And we're continuing that exercise throughout the country to determine class types and class class of soils. It's an exercise, unfortunately, that is not a quick fix. It takes time. It's tedious. We're going to have to identify every single parcel of land in Trinidad and Tobago, identify who the owners are, do legal searches, and then come up with a land management plan. We've already started the process. But unfortunately, as I say, it's an exercise that should have been done 50 years ago. It hasn't been done. We've inherited it. We are now in government, and the responsibility, falls on our shoulders to make sure that whoever comes after us wouldn't suffer what we're suffering. The example that we're trying to set through the ministry is that we must spend money, of course, to deliver goods and services, but we must do it prudently, because at the end of the day, these are taxpayers' funds. And I say to all of my staff, and I have a senior member of staff here with me, that everything we do, every single thing we do, every decision we make must stand the test of time. It must stand the severest scrutiny. There are others who are going to come after us, whether it is other generations or whether it is other governments, whether it's another minister. Whatever we do today must stand that test of that was the best thing to have done at that point in time. And what we're trying to do now is build a foundation so that it cannot be rocked, that whoever comes after will realize they can build upon it. What we're doing now is not PR. It is not gambaging. It is not gallerying for the sake of just going out on a television station or going out on putting out a full page ad. It is meaningful work that will set the tone for the agricultural sector for years to come. And that tone would be that there is a strong commitment to agriculture. Agriculture is extremely important with regard to developing a nation, and a strong nation could only be developed if